How's everybody doing today? Again, I'm Chris Pender, President and CEO of FamCom Inc. Actually got the shirt on today. I work very popularly from preschool to prison. I'm a part of the parenting series sponsored by Gear Up, feel like Vanna White now, and the Lincoln Center. Today we're going to be talking about teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. And while we're going to talk about teamwork, I think too often, more than not, parents leave everything up to the school. Everything's on the teachers, everything's on the school to figure all this stuff out. And I know often when you hear the word teamwork, you always think in terms of sports. But no, you need teamwork in everything. You need teamwork if you're going to be in a successful relationship. If you're married or you're dating, if you want to maximize it, you need teamwork. You know, if you're running a business, you know, and you're collaborating with people, you need teamwork. You know, if you're playing sports on your own, you need teamwork. So as we go to sit down, I want you to think about, you know, the importance of teamwork and why it's important and how you can apply it to your life. The question I want you to ask yourself as we're going through this whole thing is, what kind of team member are you? That's the question I want you to think about. In terms of, think of it this way. My college coach used to do all the freshmen like this. He had these two wagons. Each wagon had 4 people in the wagon, one in the front, one on each side, and one in the back. And the wagons were racing. And one wagon was slightly ahead of the other wagon. And he would ask the question, why is that wagon in the front? And we would all have these different answers because you know, you freshmen trying to be the smartest guy in the room, aerodynamics, kids weigh less, whatever. And then he said, no, if you look closer, in one of the wagons, the guy was dragging his foot in the back of the wagon. He said that happens so much in teamwork where most of the group is focused out on the prize, but you always have 1 or 2 people who are dragging their feet, slowing things down. So which member are you on the team? You know, because the other 3 parts are interchangeable. Sometimes you can be the leader, you're driving the ship. Sometimes you can just be a passenger, but you're still a part of the team. Or are you the person in the back that's dragging and slowing everybody down? So think about who you are on the team. Rise to the occasion and don't shrink to your circumstances. I say this a lot. This is something I learned from my dad, and I think it's especially applicable in teamwork. I used to go to my dad and I would say, Dad, this, that. And he would say, you have 2 choices. Either you rise to the occasion or you shrink to your circumstances. I know with COVID, kids been out of school a long time. I know sometimes, you know, teachers, there's a teacher shortage. There's so many variables why kids don't do well in school. But even though that's important, as a parent, you got to make a choice. If you're going to rise to the occasion or shrink to the circumstances, and your child's success hinges on your choice. Your child's success, their future. And this is generational I'm talking about. So this is why teamwork is important, because it's not just about you and your child, it's about if your child has children. You know, a lot of times poverty, for example, is passed down from generation to generation because we don't change the choices we make in generations. You know, mom maybe didn't value education. Now the daughter or son doesn't value education. They have a child don't value education. You know, mom's not involved in back to school night. We're going to talk about it. Dad's not involved in back to school night. It's become generational. So we need to make sure that we understand, man, either we rise to the occasion or shrink to the circumstances, but there are generational choices that we're making. If you do the same thing, expect the same thing. I love saying this because too many times we do the same thing expecting different results. You know, I give you the perfect example. If I keep walking into a room and I keep running into the door, eventually I need to open the door. But if I don't change and open the door, I'm going to keep running into the door. So think about that. What are you doing now that you've been doing, but you expect things to change? Change only happens when we actively pursue it. For instance, in an aspect of teamwork, if you have been disengaged in your child's education, or even disengaged in your relationship, how do you think it's going to get better? Your child's education is not going to improve if you stay disengaged. You have to become actively involved. You have to become an advocate for your child. If I'm disengaged in my relationship, it's not going to improve because I want it to improve. And it's not going to improve because I come up with all these great ideas. It improves when I actively pursue change. So hopefully as you go through this, that you're changing the way you think about teamwork. Teamwork. Webster defines teamwork as a combined action of a group of people, especially when effective and efficient. Effective and efficient is words I want you to really focus on. Because you can be on a team and the team not be very good. Like the team sucks because it's not, and therefore it's not effective. Efficient means, are we using our resources and our time to the best of our abilities to maximize our potential and opportunities? So as you work with your kids and the schools and everybody else involved in that community, make sure you do that you're effective and you're being efficient. One's ability to work together with another individual group will determine the success of the individual group one is associated with. Your child's success is closely tied to your ability to advocate for them in school. It's closely tied to your ability to have a team. For instance, the team is you, your child or children, working with the teacher or teachers, and working with the principal, school counselor, school administration. That's the team. Your child's ability to succeed is going to be based on how effective you are in that team and how efficient you are. What I mean, okay, effective is, are you going to back to school nights? You want to hear me say it a lot. Are you having dialogue with the teachers about your child's behavior, about your child's education? We're going to talk about that. Is it efficient? Are your meetings productive? Or are you just going up there to just kind of hang out so you can say you showed up? I go to back to school night and I'm hanging out with Rosie because I like Rosie, but we're not really talking about my child. It's not efficient. So you got to make sure you're using your time wisely. And if you look at the bottom one, when your child's successful, it's a group thing. The whole group can take a bow. So I want to make sure we do understand that. Teamwork. Teamwork. I love how they spell team, T-E-M, and work, W-R-K. I think it's pretty cute. Anyway, the ability of a group to team to work together as a single unit to achieve a common goal. And this is a little slightly different definition. I think this one is more applicable to schools, because I think your ability to work with your teacher's son's or daughter's teacher, to work with the principal or the counselor, as one, because you got to have one voice. For instance, I've heard parents tell their kids, well, you don't really have to do that. And I have parents ask teachers, is it really important? No, the teacher gives a homework assignment. The parent has to be on the team and say, you know what, I expect you to get this done. I expect you to do what you need to do. If you need help, I can get you help. I'm doing the things you need to do. The other part of the team is getting the child help. Somebody in the school may need to help. A counselor or principal may need to get involved. You may need somebody to tutor the kid, but you all got to be singing the same song. Part of the problems I see when I deal with kids in schools and teachers and administrators is everybody's singing a different song. So the poor kid is confused because the parent is telling you, you don't really have to do that. The parent is not putting mechanisms in place to make sure the child does what they're supposed to do. The teacher is saying, I need to get this done. The principal is saying, well, I don't really know what's going on. Or the principal is putting everything back on the teacher. And I'm not down in schools, I'm saying, but this is what happens when people don't work together in unison. It's like if I'm playing football and I'm the quarterback, and every time I throw the ball to the receiver, he drops it. The team is not being effective or efficient, and you're not going to win many games. And now the receiver can't say, well, I dropped the ball, it's your fault. No, you got to catch the ball. So as parents, we got to make sure we're involved and we're catching the ball, that we understand that we have one voice when it comes to our children. Teamwork is a core ingredient for success in many life skills we talked about in marriage, teamwork. If I'm not working well with my wife, my kids are going to play us against each other. They're grown, so that's not the case now, but you got to have teamwork. If you're in a setting and both parents work, you got to kind of come together and get it done. When it comes to back to school and education, that's a mom and a dad's responsibility, not just the moms, not just the dads. When it comes to having those conversations around success, what does success look like? Behavior, attendance, the many things that it goes into being a successful student, that's something that you have to work out together. That's not one parent's responsibility. That's something you have to have a conversation that everybody is involved in. As a parent or guardian, your ability to create an effective team consisting of yourself, I talked about that, your young person, teachers and school administrators, is essential to the development and success of your young person. And development is a key word in this statement, because what you have to understand, your child is still developing. They're still developing mentally, they're still developing physically, and those norms you establish, you talked about norms last week, play a key role. So how are you helping your child develop? Who's a part of that team that's helping your child develop? I know when my kids were in school, I made sure I was actively involved. So even though stuff would happen at school, I could follow up with conversations at home. If something happened at school, I knew about it. It wasn't me waiting till report card came to find out that, man, my kid is not doing well. My kid missed 40 days of school. As part of the team, you got to be engaged in those conversations. And the key word, again, is development, because your child is development, and you as the parent or guardian, you need to be essential and a key figure in the development of your child. That's your role. We can't buy that by buying sneakers and adding stuff. We got to make sure we invest in our time. It's through teamwork that a network of support, encouragement, and nurturing can be established to assist in the growth and development of our young scholars. Again, a network. A team is a network of different individuals with different skills. For instance, I use sports again. Football, you need a quarterback, you need offensive line, defensive line, you need defensive backs. Everybody has a different skill, but they come together to try to win as a team. No, your school's network is equally important. It's equally important that you have a network in school and the team is working together. Do you know who your child's teachers are? Do you know what classes they have? Do you know what time they're supposed to be in school, what time they get out of school? Do you ask your child, does he have homework? Do you look at your child's grades? Okay, you had a test today. Can I see the grades? And now they have portholes, parent portholes. So you really can do all this without your child even being around and figure out what your child is going. And you would say, okay, I see you got a D here. I never saw you study. Hey, I'm going to call the teacher. Let me call the teacher and see what's going on. So again, working as a team. You need to know who your child's teacher is. Too many times we don't even know the names of the child's teacher. What's the name in third period? No, you need to know who your child's teacher is. My kids' teachers, principals, administrators, they all knew who my wife and I were. We made sure of that. Not just back to school night. Say sometimes I would just drop in and have a conversation and see how they're doing. The team has to be engaged at all times. So it's important that you do those things. Support, a thing that bears the weight of something or keeps it upright. Parents and guardians working along with teachers should have a support system in place for students. You need that. Support system is really, really, really important. Even in a marriage, the support system is so key to a successful marriage. In a marriage, you need to be able to depend on each other. You need to be able to count on each other. There needs to be a level of accountability. That's a support system. When you become a family, your kids need a support system. They need to know that I can count on mom, I can count on dad. They need to know that if things get tough or maybe I'm having challenges, that I can go to my mom or dad and have a conversation and they'll help me. Not just scream at me, not just curse at me, not just threaten me or put me on punishment, but they'll help me. They'll understand that, your parent, you are going to advocate for them. You're going to be the voice for them. You're going to be the mediator for them. You should be the one that goes talk to the principal if it has to go that high. You need to be the one that's talking to teachers about your child's grade. Don't leave it all on your child. Yes, they play a role, but you got to make sure, man, that you're part of that system. And when you talk to teachers, mention that you're trying to create a support system. And let the teacher know your expectations. I don't want to know the day before report cards that my kid is failing. I need to kind of keep me, up to date with the kid's progress. How often do you put grades in the porthole? How long does it take you to put grades in the porthole? I've had experience with teachers took 2 weeks after a test to put in the porthole, and that sucked for parents. But as a parent, if I knew that, I know I got to be a little more in tune with what's going on with my child. So have that conversation as you create that support system, because it's important in anything you do to have a support system. What does support look like? Discuss and have a voice in the academics, behavior, and attendance of your child. Parents and guardians attend back-to-school events and teacher conferences. I say that all the time. It's funny because you'll go to a basketball game and the gym is full. You go to back-to-school night, sometimes you can throw a rock and not hit anybody. We pay more attention to sports and to some of the extracurricular activities that our kids participate in than we do the actual education process. The message you're sending your child is that extracurricular activity is more important than education, because you support the extracurricular activity, but you're not really supporting education because you don't show up. So you got to make sure you're going to back to school nights or having those teacher conferences. If you can't make it, set up a phone call. Encouragement, the action of giving someone support, confidence, or hope, and the act of trying to stimulate the development of an activity, state, or belief. And the key word here is stimulate. How are we stimulating our kids as we encourage them? Some of us, we stimulate them, but the wrong way, because we're calling them names. Some of us, we are stimulating them the correct way. Hey, Rosie, how was school today? Hey, Rosie, what happened in class today? Hey, Rosie, great job. I see you got a B. You had a C last time, now you got a B. You could say, hey, Michelle, hey, George, hey, Chris, hey, Kurt, whatever it is, but you can encourage them. And when you encourage them, you're stimulating them, because now, first of all, I'm having a conversation with my child, not only when they do something wrong, but I'm having a conversation to encourage them, give them a pat on the back too. So this child is more likely to continue in the conversation as they grow into teenagers. Secondly, people like to be stimulated. They like to know they did a good job. They like to feel good about themselves. And a lot of times, and I'm going to get some stats as we go into some stats, a lot of times our kids suffer from low self-esteem because they don't get encouragement. They get beat down when they do things wrong, but they don't get a lot of encouragement. Parents and guardians should collaborate. Keyword collaborate, work together with teachers and school administrators to provide a system where the students feel supported and the effort put forth is appreciated. Just as sports teams have cheerleaders, you must be the cheerleader for your young person. Nurturing, the care or encouraging growth or development of. Every living thing needs nurturing. I like to garden, do stuff in the garden. But if I neglect my flowers and not water them, they're not going to grow. I don't care how great they look, how much money I spend, they're going to die. Eventually, they're going to die. If I don't feed myself, if I don't eat, eventually I'm going to die. Doesn't matter how much knowledge I have, how many books I read. If I don't nurture, take care of myself, I'm going to die. You know, if you have a dog, if you have a pet and you don't take care of the pet, if you don't take care of them, they're going to die. So everything needs to be nurtured and cared for. And that's no different with your child. Nurturing and caring for is not just making sure they have meals and clothes to go to school. Nurturing and caring for is being involved and being interested in their social life, their physical life, their emotional life, and their intellectual life, and spiritual life. That's what nurturing is about, is really caring about somebody and supporting them and doing the things they need to do to be successful. You got to make sure you're doing that. And that's not just with your child. You need to model at home. If you're married, that needs to happen in your house so your child can see it. Because you lead by example. You hear me say that a lot. The data tell a concerning story about health and well-being of our nation's youth. Findings are especially stark among some students. And we're going to look at this real quick. Students are experiencing mental health crisis. In 2021, the YRBS results show lower 40%, 42% of high school students struggle with a persistent feeling of sadness or hopelessness, and nearly 30%, 29% experience poor mental health, according to the CDC. Think about that. Have you had these conversations with your kids? Do you know what's going on with your kids? It's funny because I was having an earlier conversation with a colleague and we were talking about how you never really know what somebody's going through when you see them, especially if it's a surface conversation. Are you having a deeper conversation as part of the team? Like, hey, how you doing today? You know, hey, Pete, how you doing today? How you feeling today? How you really feeling today? Are you talking to your teachers about your kids' behavior in school? Are they social in school? Are they antisocial in school? Are they lashing out? Are they distributing, anger? All those things, you got to make sure you're involved because these are real numbers. And, somebody who is hopeless is not going to put forth a lot of effort. Female students, for example, experience more violence, mental health challenges, suicidal thoughts and behaviors, and substance use than their male peers. The disparities in the rates are which female students experience such trauma and harm are substantial. Think about that. And I know trauma is taking a different turn for us because everybody thinks trauma is always somebody getting killed or murdered, but trauma can be something somebody saw. And it could be something that happened in the hospital between mom and dad. It could be, the natural death of somebody. Some of our kids have trauma, man, because, they've been exposed to things over and over and over again. It's in their head, so we got to make sure we understand. Let's talk about female students. Think about this. Our girls are under a lot of pressure. So we got to make sure we are nurturing them, we encouraging them, that we investing in them. We got to make sure we have a support system. It's not enough for you just to have it at home because your kids spend more time in school than they do at home. So you got to think about that. That's why the team is important, is make sure you get engaged with the school, man. You have a network in school so you can kind of have a full circle around. That's why it's important to know who your kids' friends are. You need to know who else is involved, and who may be counteracting your team. The percentage of female students that have ever experienced forced sex increased for the first time in 10 years, as 14% of female students have this experience. You need to know this. Teams protect your kids too. And I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I'm sharing these stats because it's important that you know what's going on in your house. You know what's going on with your kids. You have open communication. The other thing about teamwork that I really like and I encourage is now your child has somebody else to talk to. They have a whole community that they can talk to and not just one person they can go to, because as a father, I can tell you, there's times when my kids wanted to share something, they didn't feel comfortable saying it to me, they needed someone else to say it to, and that's okay. It's important they talk to somebody. Female students were nearly twice as likely to experience persistent feelings of sadness, hopelessness, nearly twice as likely to attempt suicide during, and I repeated myself, except at the end, more than 10 times, 1 in 10 attempting suicide. 1 in 10, think about that. 1 in 10. And I know we all say, well, my child's not going to be the one. We all say that. I'm trying to get you to understand the importance of having a team, a system, a mechanism, network in place so your child is not the one. So we got to make sure, man, that we're doing the things we're supposed to do. And again, this is not about, I hear people say, well, I don't want somebody in my business. I'm the parent. All that's great. But everybody needs a village. Everybody needs a community to be around them. And it takes a village to raise a child. In fact, it is a proverb that carries a profound message about community and shared responsibility that we apply to parenting today. It takes a village. It takes a lot of people to raise a child, man. I think my kids are fairly successful in what they've done. I can't take all credit for it. You know, I had coaches who were involved in that. I had teachers who made sure when they were in school, you know, they did what they were supposed to do and they were in constant communication with me. We got to make sure, you know, that we have a network, a team, a village for our children. You know, it's like if you went to the supermarket and only had one candy bar, you would be vastly disappointed. You know, or if you went to the supermarket expecting to go grocery shop and they only had one brand, it was a brand you didn't like, you'd be vastly disappointed. So another thing a village offers, it offers choices. You know, it gives our kids a chance to have choices to maybe match up with a different personality, to talk to somebody who may have been through what they've been through, you know, or going through, you know. Maybe they feel uncomfortable talking to you about a failure or talking to you about, you know, something they may be thinking about. You want your child to feel safe talking to somebody, not talking to somebody who is dumber than they are, not talking to somebody who has no experience or know nothing that's going on. You want to make sure that you have a village, somebody that they can go to and be comfortable on to. Preferably if you can find somebody in school that works. The saying emphasizes that a child's upbringing is a communal effort involving many different people and groups, from parents to teachers to neighbors and grandparents. This is a wide range, and you may have somebody else you want to put in there. I don't know, it may be a godparent. I would have been listening to this forever, but this gives you a general idea of what a village can look like. And it doesn't mean somebody else is raising your kids. I want to make that abundantly clear. What it means is that you have a team or a support system in place for your kids. School connectedness. I used to struggle with this word a lot, so it's funny. But school connectedness. And it's important because, you know, if you look at this, school connectedness is a student's belief that adults and peers in their school care about their learning about them as individuals. As I do restorative circles in the schools, one of the first questions I ask, you know, in one of the first sessions, I will ask them, I said, how many of you kids actually feel safe? How many of you feel connected to your school? And teachers were amazed how a lot of the kids didn't feel safe. A lot of kids didn't feel connected to their school. And I would ask them, how many of you see your school as a community? I was really shocked how most of them didn't know the definition of a community, but that's different. But I was really taken back because once I explained it to them, they didn't. They didn't see their school as a community. You know, and teachers were shocked because if I don't see this as a community, how am I going to be invested in it? If I don't see it as a community, no wonder I throw trash on the floor. No wonder I do different things and tear stuff up. So we got to make sure, man, that we have a team making sure they feel connected. Because when you're connected to something, you know, you're more likely to care about it. When you're connected to something, you're more likely to invest in it. You know, when you're connected to something, you have a sense of belonging. And a lot of kids who don't have a sense of belonging, they get subjected to peer pressure and they end up doing things they really don't want to do. So we got to make sure we're working on this team so they feel connected. Students who are connected to school experience less emotional distress, better mental health, and fewer suicidal thoughts. These protective efforts can last into adulthood. And I want to look at emotional distress because I think sometimes as parents, we tell our kids, you're too young to have issues. What do you mean you got problems? You know, they have problems and issues just like we do. But also, this is where the team comes in, because if your child is in third period having an anxiety attack and you're at work, you can't help them. You know, if your child's being pressured in school, they may need somebody in school to be able to go talk to help them through that situation, not wait till you get home at 7 o'clock at night. You know, because a lot of times the pressure our kids go through in school is repetitive. They deal with it almost every day. Every day, and it starts to beat on them, starts to wear them down. So now your kid is cutting class. They're not going to school. They hate going to school. They're being late all the time. These are some of the signs that you may want to take a look at, that you got to make sure that they're not having emotional distress in school. Because I know me, I cannot learn. I'm not at my best if I'm stressed about anything. And it's the same thing with our kids. You know, your kid cannot be productive in school if they're going through emotional distress. So it's real. And this leads to mental health. We have a lot of kids who have challenges right now, you know, emotional challenge in school that leads to poor mental health. You know, and that's real. You know, so it's important. This is where the team comes in. And I say this almost every class about parenting. You know, the suicide rate is growing in this country because of the things we're talking about we're not paying attention to. We make assumptions that a child is okay. You know, we kind of just think because you're young, everything's going to work itself out. Or this is my least favorite line. When I was a kid, I wasn't like that. Well, you know, we're different. We're unique. You know, we all are wonderfully, uniquely made different. So we got to make sure, man. And the thing that you got to really pay attention to is it can carry into adulthood. So these norms and habits that a lot of our kids are picking up are screwed up their relationships when they get older. You know, I've sat down with couples who in a room and we're having a session and somebody brings up something that happened when they were a kid that the other person had no idea about. And here we are 20 years later and they're married and they're struggling with something that one person went to 20 years ago because they have no idea. So we carry stuff into adulthood. So don't think, you know, and my second least favorite thing is they'll grow out of it. I don't know where that statement came from, but I hear that so much. No, you got to work with your kids at an early age to make sure when they grow in adulthood that you set them up to be as successful as possible. Can't guarantee it, but you got to be able to say you gave them all the tools and talents they need. 62% of high school students reported feeling connected to others at school. 62%, and that's high. And I think this number was definitely taken in rural areas more than inner city areas, because I do a lot of work in inner city schools and that number is not that high because they don't feel connected. They may feel connected to people or to a teacher, but not to the school as whole. And it's important. When you think of the phrase, it takes a village, think of it as being more than just saying about child run. It is evidence of the power of community and shared effort. And again, it just reiterates teamwork. Teamwork creates an environment where individuals can thrive, be creative, and celebrate their uniqueness. And to me, that epitomizes what we're talking about today. You want to put your child in the best possible situation where they can thrive, where they can become individuals that can be creative and celebrate their uniqueness. Not worry about being like somebody else. Not worry about living up to whoever standards it is. I was laughing and joking with somebody this morning on the call. You know, I went to my 44th class reunion, and there's some people who still act like they're in high school. They still living their life like they were in high school. And I'm like, wait a minute, the face you just made, I'm thinking to myself, like, how is that? You know, but then the more people I talk to, I hear more stories like that, because what happens is, you know, they were never taught to think as an individual. They so caught up in the high school thing where everybody had such favorable, strong opinions about them that they carried it out into the real world, and it doesn't work like that. When you teach your kids to be an individual, other people's opinions don't matter. I'm going to be the best version of me I can be. We got to make sure we're doing that, you know, and you want them to be creative. Don't be trying to be like everybody else. You know, be the best you. You want to make sure you're teaching your kids that you don't have to dress like everybody else. You don't have to do things what everybody else is doing. You know, you got to set your own path. You know, and you can be creative. And the final, I'm going to tell you, you got to tell your kids that they are unique. I don't care if your child's an identical twin, they have a different DNA and a different set of fingerprints. Too many times, man, we especially if we have more than one child, we make the mistake of lumping them all together. No, let your child know, man, they're unique, that they're special. You know, they're different from anybody else. It's only one of them. You know, what they choose to do, you can't make them do anything, but you can give them the tools and talents. You can give them the material they need to be successful. But you got to make sure you understand the importance of having them in a team. Because teamwork is truly, truly important. And I say teamwork makes the dream work. I know that sounds corny, but it's so true. I think as a parent, if you don't, you should have dreams for your child. You know, when my kids were little, I had dreams what I wanted them to do, what I wanted them to be. Now, it didn't turn out exactly like I said, but they're successful because my whole thing was help them be successful. You know, so you got to dream for your child. When you dream for your child, you teach your child how to dream. And that's important. So many adults I talk to now have no ambition because they have no dreams. They wake up every day like Groundhog's Day. You know, they do the same thing over and over and over again. No hopes, no expectations, excited about nothing. So a team can change all that. A team can change all that. So final closing thoughts, make sure your child is on the team. And I go back to my original question. Who are you in those wagons? What member are you on the team? Thank you very much. Chris Bender, FamCom Inc. Talk to you later.